Hi, I'm Amy Axelson, joined by my mom, Barbara Axelson, and this is Juvenile Svengalis. Have some fun with us and join us in our search for what happened to my mom's grandfather. Welcome to Juvenile Svengalis, where we find out what happened to Byron Wadsworth Culver, Princeton graduate, successful businessman, asylum inmate, and juvenile Svengali. Have you ever wondered what happened to a missing relative? You know those conversations about a family member that get mumbled over or waved off?
Welcome to the morning edition on WGTD. I'm Barb Axelson. Now here's the news.
That's my mom. She used to work in radio. She's great. So who is Byron? And what do we know about him now? And why has he been kind of a source of fascination for me and my mom and my family for all these years? I'll let my mom explain.
Byron is buried in, I guess, what you would call a potter's field. And it's an unmarked grave, sort of a sunken spot in the corner of the cemetery. In fact, is where Byron Wadsworth Culver is buried. And so all these years I meant to get a headstone, and I thought this would be a good time to do that. So he's on order, and when the spring thaw comes, the poor old boy gets a record.
Because I know you've been trying to figure out where he was.
It was the Wood County Insane Asylum, and he was there until he died in 1965. From something like around 1914, 15, you know, in the 60s and 70s, 1960s and 70s, they mainstreamed a lot of people that shouldn't have been in state institutions, but not him. He was still there, and that's where he died. Those early institutions, they raised their own crops, had livestock, and raised crops.
So they were farmers?
It was a theory in the early 20th century that fresh air and, you know, good health would help people recover from mental illness. So there's a barn somewhere in Wood County, Wisconsin, on some highway that says Wood County Insane Asylum. It's an old barn, and it's painted on the sign of the barn. There's a picture of me standing in front of this Wood County Insane Asylum barn, and it just really gave me, I don't know, some kind of I don't want to say weird, some kind of let's say magical. Some kind of a magical feeling that I was standing in the same place that my grandfather stood. Somehow he must have walked around that barn and been in that barn. He stood there, and he has this strange history.
But we don't know why he was there.
No, he did something. He did. All I know is that on his 1918 draft card, World War I, his 1918 World War I draft card, it says insane.
No.
It says insane, so that's the ultimate 4F.
He doesn't fight in World War I because he's insane.
Right.
But when was he institutionalized?
Well, that's the question. My mother was born in 1913.
Okay.
And in her super old baby book, there's a picture of him with her. I had the impression that there was some memory. So that puts it maybe 1916 that something happened.
Okay, I found a couple more things about him, which we'll get to later. But about this one article you found.
The Chicago Chronicle, Sunday, October 3, 1897. Juvenile Svengalis of Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
So when I open it up, like, your grandfather was Draco Malfoy.
I'm sorry.
He was an interesting character. So the name of this article is Juvenile Svengalis of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And it's not in the Eau Claire paper. It's in the Chicago Sunday Chronicle.
I know.
And it's on the front page.
What year is this?
The year is October 2nd, 1897. And there's big drawings of this kid hypnotizing another kid in this drawing room. And then there's another picture of them in the schoolyard with a boy hypnotist at work, this being Byron.
Eau Claire has upward of 2,500 schoolboys. 1,000 of these are convinced that they are embryo Svengalis, while the other 1,000 believe that if they do not possess the skill necessary to practice the mystic art of hypnotism, they at least have the latent power, and that it will be developed sooner or later by perseverance and opportunity. Every morning and evening, before and after school, bands of boys, big and little, assemble in the vacant lots around the city schoolhouses and try to put each other to sleep with passes of the hands, with glances from the eyes, or with the aid of paraphernalia with bright surfaces like the magic rods of the professional fakers of the stage. Every night, a party of youngsters, the most of whom have not graduated from shirtwaists and knickerbockers, come downtown as far as South Barstow Street and give public exhibitions of their powers for the entertainment of whoever cares to look on.
That's my friend Mark Lynn, or as we always used to call him, the fabulous Mark Lynn, a talented baritone, and we used to work together. Before there was Google, before there was Wikipedia, there was Mark Lynn. He knows everything. So obviously I went to Mark for some help.
Mark Lynn, you are making me crazy. This whole thing.
How am I doing that?
This whole thing started because my grandfather did something bad about 1916, around in there, and they put him away, and he died in the funny farm in 1965, and all those years he was in a mental institution, which in those days was an asylum, which was like a farm. You know, they had the health thing, you know, and so he was farming and cutting wheat and doing Wisconsin things. But I never knew what it was that he did, or what his life was like, or anything. And my mother always told me that he died of a football injury. So it was only, I think I was 18 when I sort of found out that something was wrong there, and that he was in fact alive. And then I was never able to follow up on it. But anyhow, so in my poking around, I uncovered this Juvenile Svengali article and sent it to Amy, and the rest is history.
Astounding stories are current about the success of some of the youthful hypnotists, and are accepted in good faith, because the school authorities, through Superintendent Gross, took official cognizance of the practices the other day by issuing a peremptory order to the effect that hereafter any boy who is caught trying to hypnotize another boy, either in a schoolhouse, or on his way to or from school, or in the public streets or parks, will be suspended, with an excellent chance at being permanently expelled. The order has only served to make the boys more cautious. It has not diminished their enthusiasm for the art which Svengali employed to make Trilby the slave of his will and caprice. what I think is hilarious is that I've actually been to Eau Claire.
Really?
Oh, Amy didn't tell you that part?
Oh, no, I haven't. No.
I went to college at Luther. I went to college at Luther College in Iowa, right across the state line.
No. Oh, wow.
I did. I've been to Eau Claire a lot.
Did you find it mystical?
Not really.
How it started. The first symptoms of the hypnotic fever, which is now so widespread, were detected at the 7th Ward School, where 250 boys and as many girls are instructed in elementary branches of knowledge. One evening, after school had been dismissed, Professor Hester, principal of the school, saw a crowd of boys pushing and struggling around two other lads who seemed to have their arms around each other as if engaged in a fight. The professor is a nice, amiable gentleman, and he hates fighting and brawling. Without waiting to put on his hat, he ran out into the street, pushed his way through the struggling ring of boys, and seized the two who he supposed were fighting.
Because Luther College, the town is really teensy. Decorah is very small. And Luther College, not Luther College, Eau Claire felt like the kind of, U of W is there. It felt like the larger Midwestern city that I thought Decorah was going to be. I even have I lost track of him, but I have a high school mate from Hong Kong, but he's from the Philippines. And he went to Eau Claire. He went to U of W.
Wow.
What does this mean, my young gentleman? The professor demanded, in a voice that betrayed as much anger as he was capable of feeling, and he gave his captives a shake to bring them to a realization of the fact that their sinful conduct would be punished. To the amazement and concern of the principal, one of the boys began to topple over, like a stick of cordwood that had received a sudden jolt. His body and legs and arms were rigid, his eyes closed, and there was a pallor in his face that was alarming. Professor Hester, who did not understand the matter at all, and was therefore prepared to regard the lad's sudden collapse in its worst light, clutched at his coat to prevent him from going down, but was too late. The boy did not move a muscle as he struck the ground. Before Professor Hester could reach the falling lad's side, the other boy whom he had seized and shaken fell on his knees, and striking his hands together in close proximity to his companion's pallid face, sharply commanded him to awake. As if there were magic in the command, the eyes opened, the rigidity of the muscles relaxed, and then, quicker than thought, the boy sprang to his feet at a bound. His agility was visible proof that he was sound and strong. The rest of the boys, who, contrary to all rules that govern youngsters under such circumstances, had not run away when the teacher appeared, murmured their admiration at what they saw in a subdued, though nonetheless appreciative way. Professor Hester looked astonished.
Wow. I have been there, I think, twice, and once with Amy's dad, and we sort of were on a mission. This is like 20 years ago now. We sort of were on a mission to see if we could find out what he did that
sure.
caused this. And we didn't have any luck. And then, life goes on and you do other things. And it's only recently that I've sort of determined that I really want to find out what happened. And so this article from, 1897 was just an amazing surprise.
Lum was a slender, white-haired boy with gray eyes, a thin, narrow face in which there was a mixture of cunning and intelligence. He had a small blue bicycle cap on his head, and his trousers fitted him with that peculiar ease that is indicative of a homemade garment. He was a boy who had slapped his hands over the other's face and commanded him to wake. "Yes, I hypnotized him," said Lum, and he edged away from the principal an inch or two to be prepared to run if Professor Hester evinced a desire to question his statement too violently. But Professor Hester was too much surprised at what he had heard and seen to think of chastising anybody. He wanted to make an investigation, and he decided that the best way to proceed would be to wait until the next day, when he could reach the boys who appeared to understand the affair one by one. The professor's investigation amazed him quite as much as it alarmed Superintendent Gross, after that gentleman had been informed of what had happened in front of the 7th Ward school. He found that the boys of the school, and most of the girls as well, were more or less familiar with hypnotism and the means of practicing it, and that there was a perfect craze among them to exercise the power with which Du Maurier invested his villain Svengali. Craze is widespread. Every lad in the school who was out of skirts was of the opinion that he could produce a cataleptic sleep in any other lad who would submit to his efforts long enough. But investigation showed that there were only 2 among the 250 who had developed the power to an extent that enabled them to practice it with even a fair degree of success. And Professor Hester learned from inquiry among the pupils who had seen this pair exercise their peculiar talents on their fellows that they had enjoyed a success that was almost phenomenal.
He's giving demonstrations with this other kid, what's the name?
Scavold? Hold on.
One of them was the lad Lum, whose exhibitions on the roadway he had seen, but had not understood at the time. His full name is Lum Scatfold. The other boy was Byron Culver, a sturdy little man of 12, whose mother is one of the best-known society leaders in Eau Claire. Byron is the antithesis of Lum, both physically and mentally. He has a big, round, honest face in which there is plenty of manliness and character. He is still in knickerbockers, but this evidence of extreme youthfulness does not seem to militate against him as one of the leaders of the boys of the school. His mother is wealthy. Young Scatfold's father is a coachman. In spite of the disparity in their social environments, the 2 lads seem to be the closest of friends, and since they have discovered that they possess the hypnotic power, though they exercise it in different ways, they are rarely ever separated.
This was reported on October 2nd by a special correspondent that went to Eau Claire, Wisconsin, from Chicago. We reported on October 3rd, and his reporting is on October 2nd. This is going to become important later.
On the next episode of Juvenile Svengalis.
That my grandfather was trying to get his 15 minutes of fame, or is this just fun?
Was in the paper quite a bit, and on a national level. Okie dokie. Well, there's Miss Dumpy. She's having none of this. Circulating library, which was devoted to the exclusivity of hypnotism. So this is a little strange. Then, in sight of the whole class, he deliberately raised the cup to his lips and drank the contents. So this incident with this water becomes national news. Lum, she was no trilby. What is that? What is trilby? Oh, Arcana's got back to me.
A hypnotic green parrot.
So she's upset. She's not having any of this.
The Vitopathic Institute.
Oh, wow. This is exciting. Oh, my God, they found the case. We were able to find the case file against Dr. Picken and his son in the Mabel Briggs case, and I've included the PDF of those files scanned. Oh!
An abduction and a possible double murder. Join us as we uncover what happened to my mom's grandfather and the bizarre world and colorful cast of characters we discover in the most unlikely of places, the Gilded Age of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Thank you for listening to Juvenile Svengalis. We hope to see you next time.
What is that thing that my kids are always doing with the wands? What are they saying all the time?
With what?
Wingardium Leviosa. They're doing this to each other.
Oh, yeah. Who?
And, so, who's Trilby?
I don't know.
That's like something I have to look up. I don't know who Trilby is.
This is Amy Axelson.
And I'm Barb Axelson, and this is Juvenile Svengalis. A special thank you to Mark Glenn, TF. Music by Jason Shaw of Audionautics.com, Simon Sounds, Dude Awesome, and Frankie of freesound.org. Thanks to Jody Kiffmeyer, archivist at Chippewa Valley Museum. Thomas Swift, class of 76, Princetoniana Committee. Greg Cocken, head special collections librarian at the McIntyre Library at UW Eau Claire, and his assistant Stephanie. And Lee Grady, reference archivist, Wisconsin Historical Society. Juvenile Svengalis is written, edited, and produced by Amy Axelson. Thank you for listening to Juvenile Svengalis.